Hello everybody and welcome to our second mentorship session. I want to thank you all for your participation in our RE-EDUCO School Contest. Today we are going to see how to define the problem and the solution, also the value proposition for our business model canvas. So let's go.
So, as we did in the previous presentation, let's take a look to the index of contents for this session. As we know, we are in the second mentorship session, and in this one, we are going to see, as I previously introduced, the problems, the solutions, and how to define the unique values proposition that we are going to include in our business model canvas. In order to do that, we'll start with a brief recap of the contents that we saw in the last session. Then I'm going to introduce you this session just by telling you what are we going to see. And after that, I will talk to you about the problem in order to define the challenge that we want to address with our solution. And in order to define the problem and also ideate the solution, I'm going to give you a great tool that it's called design thinking. After defining the solution, we are going to design the value proposition of our proposal. Just to have a brief recap of what we saw, we started last session, we saw the business model canvas. The business model canvas, as I said, is a strategic management tool that easily helps us to define and to communicate the business idea or concept that we have in mind. It's a one-page document, as we saw, which works through the fundamental elements of a business or a product and helps us to structure an idea in a coherent way. It is very useful in order to define the business models that we understood last session, that it's like the map of our business. And it helps to develop differentiated value propositions in the market, and not only for new businesses or new ideas, but also for existing business models that want to improve their differentiation, that want to strengthen their competitive advantages, or that want to identify new business opportunities. It gives us a global view of the business. It is very visual, very direct, and easy to share in order to tag ideas and thoughts in order to find new ways or solutions to existing challenges. Why do we use the business model canvas? Well, we use it because it quickly draws a picture of what the idea entails. It also allows us to get an understanding of the business and to go through the process of making connections between what the idea is and how to make it into a business. It also takes into account what kind of customerizations will influence the use of the final service or product, and it allows everyone to get a clear idea of what the business likely be. Here we have the business model canvas. We have on the left side the internal part of the model, this business model, that refers to the business. In this part that we'll see in the next session, we are going to define the key partners. That is, these partners will facilitate us the resources and will boost our business. Also, the key activities that we are going to develop in order to reach our value proposition, as well as the key resources that we are going to need in order to also meet this value proposition. And it is not only material resources, but also human resources. And then we are going to define the cost structure that defines the cost proportion assigned to each activity, for example, the development of the product or the marketing or the customer services. On the right side, we can see the external part of the business model canvas that refers to the customer, and the customer includes, on one hand, the customer relationship together with the different customer segments, that is, which is going to be the objective, the target of my solution, and how I am going to develop the relationship with this target, and the channels that will be the tools that we'll use in order to develop these relationships. And finally, we'll define the revenue stream, that is the balance between the price that we have in mind and the price that the customer are willing the customers are willing to pay for our product and service. And we have to keep in mind that the revenue stream and this price should always be cost effective. And what are we going to see today? Well, today we are going to define the value proposition, as I previously said. And to define this value proposition, first of all, we have to identify the problem that we want to solve and the solution that we are going to give to this problem, always taking into account that the solution that we give should be a differentiated one. So let's start with the problem. The problem means that we have to define the challenge that we are going to address with our value proposition, and we have to answer one question. We have to wonder ourselves, what problem or problems does my solution solve? And we have to clearly express what are these problems and how my solution is going to address these problems. You have a template that we have supplied you during the course of these mentorship sessions. And the first slide or the first part of this template is similar to this one. And you have to insert all the ideas that you have reached after this session. And we'll give you a tip. In order to find a problem that we want to solve, we have to look in our closest community. That is, we have to ask ourselves what's problem related to the chosen sector. For example, if you have chosen the climate change sector, which problem related to the climate change or the sustainability of our daily actions may I find in my family, in my school, my community, my friends, whatever. So here I introduce you the tool that we are going to use. The tool is design thinking. Design thinking is going to help us to define how are we going to create, to deliver, and to capture the market value. It is a tool that will help us also to solve the problem in a creative way and will help us to focus on people. That means that design thinking is a tool that is user-centered, customer-centered, sorry. And to put the customer in the center will lead to better products, better services, and better internal processes. The first question that we have to answer is, what is the human need that we have to meet behind this problem? Okay, so design thinking can help us to better understand the unmet needs for the people that we are creating for our solution. For example, a customer, a client, or a student. It is also going to help us to reduce the risk that is associated with the launching of new ideas, products, and services. This is why this is because design thinking is an iterative tool. You are going to, for example, step 1, 2, 3, and then to come back to step 1, for example. It is going to help us to generate solutions that are revolutionary, not only incremental. That means that we are not going only to solve the problem or improve a little bit the life of our target audience, but we are going to revolutionize these their lives with this solution. And it helps us to learn and iterate faster. To learn and iterate faster means that we are going to be able to identify the problems or the possible mistakes from the very beginning, and we are going to learn faster from these mistakes and to develop better solutions. It is not a linear process, as I've said. You don't have to necessarily go to step 1 from step 1 to step 2, 3, or 4. You can come back to previous steps in order to define your solution, and it mixes the analytical and intuitive thinking. That means that we are going to mix a more scientific mind with a more creative mind. You are going to involve the viability that is related to the creative minds, the intuitive thinking, to enable to move the knowledge forward and keep up with the changing needs of the users. You are going to adapt your solution to the user always, thanks to the intuitive thinking. And you are also going to reach the enough reliability for these corporate minds that need that everything is shared and precise. In other words, you are going to take the invention of the future from the intuitive thinking, the thinking out of the box, and some parts of the inductive and deductive reasoning that is related to the analytical thinking. To better understand this concept, we have here the differences or the main features of both thinkings. The analytical thinkers want to hold and to refine the knowledge. They want to be sure about what they know. They start from a familiar point, and they don't like the mystery state. That means that they do not feel comfortable with uncertainty. They want to automatize process in order to predict the results and to calculate and to be sure that everything will go according to plan. And then they want also to apply this inductive reasoning in order to prove that they know something, and also the deductive logic. That means that from this starting point that they know, they are going to calculate what is going to happen in the future. And they use the past for the analysis of the past experiences to predict the future. And their magic word is reliability. Analytical thinkers are more business people, scientists, and they like to have everything ensured. They want to be sure of what is going to happen and of what is happening now. And then we have the intuitive thinkers that are more designers and people that think out of the box. They see things different. They are more sensible. They are happy in the midst that they like uncertainty. They feel comfortable outside the comfort zone, sorry, and they are concerned with how things ought to be. They are happy to explore new solutions, new areas, and the possible solutions of the problems are always based on the feelings and intuition, not on data or numbers. And they do not like to follow this reasoning phase. Okay, their malleable word means is validity. That means that if you do something, this thing is going to produce the results that you want. So here you have the process of the design thinking. It is based on 5 steps. The first and the second steps are more related to the definition of the problem. They are the research and the definition phases. We are going to see them deeply in the following slides. And then you have the 3 last stages that are ideation, prototyping, and testing, which are more related to the definition of the solution. Starting with research phase, the research phase is directly related with empathy. That means that we have to understand what is the real problem of the target audience. And this target audience are people. So we have to try to be empathetic with them. And always take into account that the user is in the center of our solution and of our process, and that our solution should add a significant value to this problem that they have. It is really important that clearly define the target audience before starting this phase. So you have to know who is going to use your solution before starting this journey, okay? And in order to understand our target audience, it is important that we understand first the environments and the players that are interacting with them in their daily reality, okay? So we have to collect information. This information should be analyzed in the future, but first, right now we are in the phase in which we are going to collect information. There are several tools in order to do that. You can use, for example, interviews to ask what they need, or focus groups, that is a group interview. We can use also the shadowing tool, that it means observe these people in order to understand, better understand what they are doing, or the benchmark tool, that means that we have to analyze the competitors that have similar solutions in order to find which are the areas that they are not covering with their solutions. And always know, you have to know that Google is your friend. That means that you can use Google, always verifying that the source is reliable, in order to find information from different types. For example, you can use forums or Google reviews, or even using Google to search for the websites and things like that. So the best way to understand something is using an example. So imagine that I'm a company and I want to launch a new hotel brand. And as a hotel brand, I want to create a hotel that offers a differentiated experience to my customers and that fosters the loyalty. That means that my customers are going to choose me once and once again due to my value proposition, okay? So the challenge that I face right now is what can I do to make that my guests feel like home, okay? So in order to do that, I'm going to start with the research phase, and some simple ways to get this information are, for example, to organize interviews and focus groups. That means that I'm going to ask myself, I'm going to ask my friends, I'm going to ask my family and random people about their experiences in different hotels. Or I'm going to use the shadowing tool, trying to remember my previous experiences, or just if I am traveling at this moment with a friend, I'm going to observe my friend in order to see if I find something that is he or her is missing, and to try to understand this necessity. Or I'm going to use the benchmark tool. I'm going to study other hotels, to visit their web pages, to see the services that they offer, to call to ask for information on if I have if I have traveled to other hotels. I can see, or I can try to remember what things I missed in these hotels. And finally, I am going to use Google to see the Google reviews, or to see the forums or things like that that will give me more information about my competitors or the necessities of the different guests. Once I have all this information, I go through the next phase, which is the design phase. This phase comes from the empathy phase. That means that we are going to, that implies that we are going to organize all the information that I have. And all this information organized will help me to better understand or to give a solution to all these necessities. So we are going to define a sentence that is going to clearly reflect the desire, the necessity of the user. We are going to see the pains and gains, that is the positive and the negative points. And to identify what my user is going to need. From the analysis of these sentences and of these necessities, I am going to obtain the real need and to find the opportunity in this need. And we have to take into account that the problem should not be really big, because if the problem is really big, I am not going to be able to solve this problem. And if the problem is really small, my solution is not going to have a significant value, because it's going to solve only a minimum thing, and a minimum thing cannot be a business solution. So some questions that we can ask are, which is the problem, or the information that I have is valuable, or I have just collected some information that is not significant for my research, and why are these problems important? So at this point, we have to redefine the challenge. The tool that I propose you are the clusters. That means that we are going to group the information that we have. We are going to collect all this information, to use POSITs. I recommend you to use POSITs, to write down the necessities, and to set common criteria to analyze or to organize these necessities. As we can see in the three images that we have below, we can see a collect phase in which we have all the POSITs not organized with all the information. And then we have the organization phase, in which, using these criteria, we have grouped the different necessities according to these criteria. Then we have to write a sentence that synthesize the reality of these groups. We have to find a short and direct and easy sentence that is going to reflect the reality of the group itself. And this is the synthesize phase. For example, if I have four necessities, one of them is I cannot exercise during my trips. I cannot watch TV during my trips, or I would like to work during my free time in my bedroom, and I would like to have a cold shower in the morning. For example, these four necessities are related to daily habits. So I need to develop my daily habits in order to feel comfortable. This could be like a sentence for these 4 kinds of necessities that are related. So following our example, once we have all the information and we start with the design phase, we have, imagine that you have performed all this clusterization of the information. So we have reached 3 sentences, and these 3 sentences are: home is when you feel that your family is close to you, or being able to follow my regular routine and to keep my daily habits is enough to make me feel like home. And home for me is having fun and feeling comfortable. So we have now these 3 opportunities, and we have to choose the best one, or the one that meets our philosophy and values. So according to that, we choose that home is when you feel like your family is close to you. So we are going to redefine talent. We want to know what could we do in order to make our customers feel like family is close to them. Instead of saying what could we do in order to make our customers feel like home, we are going to say feel like family is close to them, because this is the challenge that we have identified and we have our problem defined. So we are going to jump to the next step. The next step is to define the solution. In the template that we have proportioned you, you have also a slide that includes a space for the solution that you are going to ideate. And you have to explain, to describe your solution and to explain us what does your product or service do. And a tip is that if you can use images to illustrate your solution, it is better to use them because it will be more graphical and more tangible and better to understand. So in order to define the solution, you have to jump to the next step, that is the ideation phase, and followed by the prototyping and by the testing. Starting from step number 3 that I said is ideation, in this step, you have to use your creativity. You have to be creative and crazy. And so you have to, now we have our challenge, our problem defined, we need a solution. And the process of ideation will lead us to specific solutions to solve these problems. And that means that we are facing the creative challenge of this process. We have to formulate our idea in a positive way. Instead of using negative words or negative sentences, we are going to try to show our challenge as a positive, as an opportunity in a with positive words and positive perspective. So the question is, how could we make our customers feel like home, instead of saying that, how could we make our customers not feel lonely? Okay. This idea should, on one hand, answer to the challenge that we have defined in the previous steps, and also to give an answer that adds a significant value if we compare our solution with the competitor solutions, okay? In order to regulate and to make this process easier, we have to define a facilitator, and the facilitator will guide us during all the process. And I recommend you to think out of the box. At this point, you have to think different in order to find different solutions. The tool that you can use is brainstorming. I'm sure that you remember brainstorming from the previous session. And I give you some tips to perform this brainstorming. The first one is that you have to focus, to put your challenge and the people in the center of the process. You have to have fun. Brainstorming is not, it's a funny process. So forget about judging the others and be really serious during this process. Use post-its to write down all the ideas. They all together. This will help you to organize the information and number the ideas in order to create a structure. And if you get stuck, just jump. Don't let some ideas or some topics to block your creativity. So if you see that your creativity is completely stuck, you just jump to other idea and start again. And if you want to generate confidence among the team members, you can start with an ice-breaking activity, like a kind of game, to better meet each other and things like that. And of course, make your idea tangible, draw your ideas, draw your solution, be realistic, and don't forget that you are trying to solve a challenge, okay? So remember, the better, the more ideas. Have fun during the process, launch your craziest ideas, be visual, and do not judge the others, creating always a single conversation. All the team should be working together. And following the example, we have here that our challenge is what could we do in order to make our customers feel like family is close to them. And now we start with the ideating phase. Just imagine that you have performed this brainstorming process and you have reached one solution. And this solution is a welcome pack. And this welcome pack will be given to your guest, and when they arrive at the hotel, they will receive this welcome pack, and it will be full of things that the family of the guest have chosen for them. Okay, you have your solution, but now you have to define the specific functionalities or the specific, to be more specific in the definition of your solution. Okay, so you have to choose the best idea among the different ones that have arisen in the previous phase. And now you start with the basic prototyping. That means that you don't have to include all the functionalities, only the basic ones, and that will help us to understand what are you going to develop. Do not worry if you fail, because if you fail soon, you're going to hit faster the final solution. Failure is always a way of learning, and you have to see if the idea connects with the necessities that you have previously defined, okay, the necessities of the user. And always filter the different ideas that you have in order to define your solution. And to filter this idea, you have to evaluate if these ideas add a significant value for the user, are easy to be implemented, and generate a business impact, okay? So right now it's the time to draw your solution and to be specific, okay? So the different tools that you can use are, first of all, the role playing. You can represent us the situation in which your solution will work. For example, choose two team members of your team and make like a theater play in which you're going to show us your solution. Or draw it, you can draw it, make a diagram of your solution if it is something tangible. Or if it is a service, for example, you can draw a storyboard like a comic in which you are going to see how the user is going to interact with your solution. Or you can use a brochure, like this more commercial. You are going to describe your solution, and also you're going to give us this commercial speech to convince us to buy your solution. And if you have used physical resources to draw your solution, maybe you can make a screenshot of a picture and you can upload it to your presentation in order to show us your solution. In our example, we have to define our welcome pack through the prototyping phase. So we have defined our welcome pack as it follows. Our solution will imply that the hotel staff is going to call the family or a relative of the guest, and they are going to decide together which things we are going to include in this welcome pack. The hotel staff will buy the items. We have to define if the hotel staff is going to buy the items, or if the relative or family member is going to send all the products to the hotel. This welcome pack could include material things and also some other ideas, for example, a letter. And this welcome pack will be in the hotel right at the moment at which the guest arrives. So when they enter into in the room, they are going to see the welcome pack, for example, on the bed. And you have to define, we are going to define a maximum budget for the welcome pack. And now we jump to the final stage. The final stage is testing. And at this point, we have to answer this question: does my solution work? So we have to prove how our solution is going to add value to the users. And we are going to define which parts of the solution we are going to test. That doesn't, testing does not mean that you have to test all the solution. You have to, for example, you can only test the most important parts. We are going to present the solution and how does it work. And we're going to get feedback about what we've done. So for example, you can do this with your teacher. If your team can sit down with your teacher and say, okay, we have developed that, tell us do you think that this is working, or which things do you think that we have to improve? And so, or you can also show this solution to your colleagues or to your family, whatever, just if they are the final users, just to receive this feedback. Just take into account that you are not trying to sell them the solution. You are trying to obtain enough feedback in order to improve your solution. And always remember that the user is in the center. So if you can test the solution with your final user, it will be better. And keep in mind that your solution should be coherent and should link the user and their necessities always. And forget your ego. You are here to receive feedback and to improve. And your opinion or your feelings are not related to the user. The user is right now the person that knows what they want. So you have to listen to everything that could help you. And this is the tool that I'm going to present you for this phase. You have only to listen. For example, you can write down all the feedback and collect every comment that could help you, to read carefully all this feedback and all the opinions together with your team, and generate a discussion with your team from this feedback that you have received, and also receive feedback from your team, collect their opinions, always listen to constructive criticism, forget your ego, and just learn from the other opinions. And of course, iterate. Ask yourself to which phases of the process you should come back, just in order to redefine your solution and to reach a better idea. And finishing with our example, now we have our welcome pack clearly defined, and we have to prove if this is going to work. We have to test that. So some questions that we can ask are, for example, does the solution add significant value to the user? Ask to your family or to your friends if the solution will help them to feel like their family is close. You have to ask yourself if the solution is cost effective for the hotel, or if you're going to lose money, if the logistics are feasible, or how could the idea be improved. Some do's and don'ts with the design thinking process. You have always to focus on the user necessities and desires, all the pains and gains, what they value the most and what they think they need. To try to find an answer that adds a significant value to the user, you have to be creative, you have to be daring, you have to be open, and you have to iterate and learn from failure. Failure is not the end, failure is just a new beginning. And you don't have to impose your personal opinions and thoughts about the viability of the idea. Remember that the user is in the center, not you. You don't have to judge your team. You don't have to underestimate your ideas or your team's ideas. You don't have to forget the users. And as I've said, you don't have to get frustrated with failure, because it's a new beginning. If you want a recap of this video, I will let you on the video on the description of this video the link to this session, and you will have it also in the contents that we are going to give to you. And this video just makes a great recap of all the design thinking process, with some illustrations that maybe will be easier for you to understand. Well, once we have identified our problem and we have defined our solution, we are going to define the value proposition. You have to show us your idea in an engaging way. So you have to tell us what is unique or special about your solution, and you have to tell us why your solution is different from the competitor solution, or how are you going to make your solution stand out. You have in the template of the business model canvas a slide similar to this one that you have to fill with the value proposition. And if you need to understand what it is, the value proposition is the thing that you use in order to convince the public to get your solution, to use your solution of yours or your product or service. And it has to be relevant, different, and credible. That means it has to be credible because you have to explain clearly the benefits of your solution in a really brief way. it has to be different because you have to explain to your target audience why your solution and why they should choose your solution instead of the competitor solution. And it should be relevant because you have to explain how are you going to solve the problem of your audience, and not only how are you going to solve this problem, but also how are you going to improve their lives. Okay, you are trying to combine us, just remember. If you need some help defining the value proposition, maybe you can follow this process. This process starts from listing all the necessities that you have found. Remember the problem, the research, and the design phase. You are going to list all the necessities that you have found in your customer, and then you are going to rank your necessities in basic necessities. That means that they are necessities that you need to meet necessarily. If you do not meet any basic necessity, your solution is not going to be complete. Also, the performance necessities that are going to have a rank, a minimum and a maximum score, and the superfluous or enjoyment necessities that are more superfluous or more or things that do not necessarily need to be met, but they add value to your solution. So you have to give a specific score to each necessity, a minimum and a maximum. And once you have defined all the necessities, you have to find 3 direct competitors with similar solutions to your solution. And with these 3 competitors and your solution, you are going to evaluate your proposal against the competitor's proposal based on the different needs that you have defined. And once you have made this analysis, you have to understand the conclusions and explain your audience why they should choose you after this process. Okay, this will be the definition of the value proposition. So here you have an example. We have ranked 2 basic necessities. We have 3 performance necessities and 2 engagement necessities. The basic necessities could or could not be met, as we can see here. The performance necessities have a rank from 1 to 5. So you have to give this, put this score to the different necessities according to the different, according to different solutions that you have identified. And then the enjoyment solutions could or could not be present at your solutions, these enjoyment necessities. So making this analysis, we can see that, for example, this one, this competitor number 1, has exactly the same score according to the performance necessities, and has exactly the same score according to the enjoyment necessities. The other ones are far away from our solution. So we have to put the focus on the basic necessities, and we can see that competitor 1 only meets 1 of the 2 basic necessities, while we meet both of them. So we can see that our solution is the winning solution, and that we have generated a value proposition that is better than the competitor's value proposition. In fact, it is the best. So here you have some examples that could help you and could inspire you in the definition of your value proposition. You can see here that Uber says, tap the app, get a ride. And it explains why Uber is the smartest way to get around. 1 tap and a car comes directly to you, blah, blah, and blah, blah. So here you can see that Uber is telling you why you should choose Uber instead of a taxi, for example, or to use Uber instead of Cabify, that is another service, or any other similar operator. So this is how Uber presents their value proposition. And then you have here another example that is Unbounce, that is a page that helps you to develop your landing pages, and it also presents the value proposition as we can see in the image. So I think that it could be these are great examples that could help you to define your value proposition. For example, you can also may search for other value propositions that are really, really good. Coca-Cola or Sephora has also a unique value proposition. And once you have studied and just get familiar with all these concepts, it's your turn. Now you're going to work in groups. You have your solution or your sector previously defined from the previous session. And in this session, you have to define the problem, you have to identify the problem, define the solution, and describe your unique value proposition. These are going to be the homework that you are going to deliver to the mentors before the next session. And this is the way that we have to monitor your progress during all the school contest. So the material that you send to us does not necessarily be going, it does not necessary, it is not going to be necessary the final solution that you are going to send us, but maybe you could receive some valuable feedback from your mentors and teachers. So I recommend you to do this homework just in order to have a process aligned with the different mentorship sessions. We are going to give you the templates and all the contents of this session. You're going to have the video, you're going to have this presentation that I have shown you during all this mentorship session, and also the templates, and of course, all the partners are here just to help you during all this process. And thank you very much for attending this class. Here you have the contacts of the different countries for the different contests that we are performing right now. And thank you very much for your attention. I'll see you in the next mentorship session, in which we are going to develop the business part of the business model compass. Thank you very much and see you soon.